Good evening. It's October 22nd, 2024. The time is 6 p.m. I call to order this meeting of the Select Board for the Town of Hingham. This meeting is being held in person and/or remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is there anyone here recording? Seeing none, I will note for the record that participating this evening is Bill Ramsey, Liz Klein, and myself, Joe Fisher. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you are willing and able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda, I see approval of minutes, but I'm not sure that we have minutes that we are going to be approving this evening.
I don't think so this evening.
So we will pass on that and move up to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion of recommended changes or updates to the mooring fee schedule and mooring regulations. Is Joe Driscoll.
Good evening.
How are you?
Doing well, how are you?
I assume Ken Corson is not available right now?
Correct, I'll be standing in for him tonight.
So please, if you can walk us through what is being recommended, and I will just note for the record that after this meeting, we will be instructing that whatever recommendations we consider will be posted to the public, and so there'll be time for public comment, not just at this meeting, but subsequent to this meeting as well. So please, if you can let us know.
Yes, so for our mooring fees, as you may know, all vessels are required to obtain an annual permit to keep their boats in our waters. Currently, our permits for an annual mooring or docking are $9 per foot. In World's End, the annual moorings are $650 per year. For transient rentals in World's End, they're $50 per day per vessel. For our transients outside of World's End, they're $35 per day per vessel, and then our assignmentless fee currently is $15 per year. Back in 2016, the Select Board had set up a fee schedule to increase the fees between 2017 to 2021, with mooring and docking increasing 50 cents per year for 4 years, ending at $9 our current. World's End was increased $100 per year from $250 to $650, and transients for World's End went from $35 per day per vessel to $50 per day per vessel. Those were in 2021, the end of that fee schedule, which is how they remain today. And these fees are deposited into the Waterways Improvement and Maintenance Fund, which are used for harbor-related expenses, such as dredging like we have coming up in 2029 for the Inner Harbor, wharf repair, and Harbor Master Division operations. So what we are asking the Select Board to consider is setting the assignment list fee to $20 per year, which is an increase from $15. Set the 2025 annual permit fee to be $9.50 per foot, with an increase each year for the next 3 years, which would be ending at $11 per foot in 2028. Setting the 2025 annual World's End permit fee to $750, with a $100 increase each year for 3 years, which would end at $1,050 in 2028. And then setting the World's End transient rental fee to $150 per day, but allowing up to 3 boats to raft rather than being a set fee per boat per day. It would be 1 set per mooring, and they can have up to 3 boats onto it. Then also allowing the harbor master to pursue a plan to increase our rentals in the inner harbor which could incorporate possibly launch service or other services to better accommodate our boaters and draw more people into our rentals within the Inner Harbor.
Could you go over how our fees compare to our neighboring towns?
Yes, our fees are fairly comparable. We have a list of many surrounding communities, such as Situate, which is at $8 per foot, plus a $125 waterway fee for every boat. Marblehead is $9 to $10 per foot. Plymouth is $10 per foot, plus they have a $50 mooring permit fee, plus an additional $150 per resident or $250 non-resident waterway fee. Duxbury is $10 to $15 per foot. See, Rockport is $11 per foot. So we're right around the same as a lot of the surrounding. Some are a little bit lower, some are a little bit higher. Our closest neighbor would be Hull at $8 a foot. They're increasing in 2025 to $9 per foot, and then up to $10 per foot by 27.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how other communities handle changes over a multi-year period.
Yes, I know, speaking with the Hull Harbor Master, they're doing a step increase like we proposed to do.
And are there material differences in the types of services that we offer compared to our neighboring towns? So
Personally, I haven't boated
Okay.
in Plymouth, or I
Right.
really have just boated in Hingham, so I
Right.
can't attest to that. But, I mean, we provide a lot of manpower on patrols, managing the moorings, the assignments, and all that. I would believe that communities like Holland and stuff like that do as well, but I personally can't attest to.
I don't know, if, like for pump-out services, whether there are additional fees.
From all the pump-out services that I know of, they all utilize the Clean Vessel Act like we do, where a lot of our operational costs are reimbursed from a grant,
Got it.
3/4 of it. So
Okay.
we still do have to provide some that isn't reimbursed.
Other than the fee schedule, what else are you proposing in terms of changes in regulations?
For our general regulations, we have, so we have our mooring, anchoring, and town pier regulations. Those were adopted in 2011, and over the next 7 years, our division kind of developed, improved, and modernized the way that we manage our moorings and do our administration of these moorings. Starting in 2018, the regulations were reviewed and modifications are considered, such as a rafting limit at World's End, such as a 5-boat limit on moorings, requirements for notification to our division for boats that come into the harbor and just anchor, if they're going to be there for more than a certain amount of time. Currently, we have it in there for the regulations to be, we must be notified of no more than 48 consecutive hours. And then one of the other big ones was the regulations governing the dredging of the Inner Harbor Basin, mainly having a regulation in there for the requirement to remove any floats or rafts within the harbor before our dredging season. So these changes were proposed to the Harbor Development Committee in 2019, and they voted in support of them. In April of 2020, we held a public hearing to discuss these regulations. That was a 3-hour Zoom meeting with a lot of public input. In May of 2020, the proposed changes were discussed with the Select Board with a follow-up in May of 21. Then in March of 24, the Environmental Police provided their comments for the regulation, or regulations. They had 3 comments. One was for Section 9 on anchoring. They wanted to include the word consecutive for 48 consecutive hours. Section 12 for stray vessel, they wanted the definition to be consistent with the Mass General Law. And then Section 18, conformance with existing regulations, they stated that it was too vague. However, this was reviewed by Town Council and the Harbor Master Division, and it was determined that it was not too vague. So there were no changes made to that section. These comments were reviewed with Town Council, and a response was sent in July of 2024 to the Environmental Police. In August of '24, the Attorney General's office declined to review the regulations. So after our lengthy review, considering the public input from that very long meeting, the public safety and operational requirements, the regulations have been revised, and I believe they have been sent on to the Select Board. However, there are no major changes that the boaters are going to be affected by, because it is the way that we currently operate. So at this time, we are requesting to have the regulations published and put into effect.
So we're going to, you'll hear comments from us and from members of the public, and then the plan would be to disseminate what's being proposed to the boating public as well as to our residents for their comments. How do we get these proposals out there? Do you send it, you've got a mailing list, an email list? How do we get that information out?
Yes, so for our mooring regulations, the changes and the proposals, we had sent that out. We post them on the website, on the hpd.org website under the Harbor Master Division. We send out a news flash about it, and then we have a mailing list from our permit holders, because we have all their email. And we send them out, a notification out. And then there are their guidelines on posting it in a public paper as well.
Okay, great. Liz?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate the benchmark information. I think that's helpful. I noticed some of the towns mention commercial or non-resident rates. Is that something that we considered?
Currently, we do not have separate rates for commercial, non-resident versus resident. The state law doesn't allow a separation of the two, so we do not
Okay.
do that for mooring fees.
Okay. And the short-term mooring rental, that term versus overnight, is there any difference? Some of the towns say it's per night.
That might just be the way they word it for how they rent out their moorings. We do it from a 11 a.m. to the following 10 a.m. period for a
Okay.
rental,
Okay.
for a 24-hour rental period.
Okay,
Some do it hourly, we do it per day.
okay. And to follow on to Joe's question about the services, some towns, I think, do provide bathrooms, showers, kitchen facilities, as well as tender service. So what are we thinking in terms of the services that might be, is that part of the Inner Harbor plan?
That I can't speak to on what the actual plan would be.
Okay.
I haven't discussed that with Harbor Master Corson. I know ideally it would be nice to have a facility for transient boaters to come to be able to even have fresh water on the dock would be a huge improvement.
Right. Okay, so in terms of the benchmark towns, do we have a sense of if services are included? Like Hull, I don't.
Hull does not, most of them for services like that, they're provided through a marina.
Yeah,
A lot of the towns don't do a transient type. They rely on the marinas to take care of anything like that.
okay,
Hull does not have any. Weymouth does not have any. Plymouth, they use their marinas as well.
okay. Okay, and as far as World's End, I know several years ago, there was discussion about changing the mooring field, the layout, and possibly adding more mooring balls. sounds like a different approach where we're assuming people are gonna raft up, right? So,
Yes, so with these regulations, it would allow up to 5 people on one of the private annual moorings to raft up. On our moorings, we allow 3.
okay,
The change in that mooring field hasn't been implemented or gone any further from
Okay.
trying to add more moorings.
okay. And what is the wait list looking like for World's End?
Quite long. It has a very slow turnover, and we have many people on the wait list.
Yes, okay.
So,
Yes, I know they're in high demand. All right, that's it for me right now. Thank you.
So before I turn it over to Bill, just, I want to follow up on the commercial versus non-commercial. Do you have a sense of the percentage of vessels that we're talking that are commercial, that use our?
very low. Most of our commercial fishing vessels are on one dock in the shipyard marina.
Okay, so it's not a big percentage.
Correct.
Right, okay, great, thanks. Bill?
Great. Well, Joe, thanks for being here tonight. So I'd like to get a little more information as to, why we need to do this. I know that we haven't increased fees since 2016, but certainly don't want to increase fees simply just to increase fees. So one of the reasons Ken cited in his memo was 2029 anticipated dredging fees costs. When was the last time we dredged, and what do we anticipate the cost to be?
The last time we dredged was 2019. As for the cost, I can't speak to that. I don't know if we could get back to you with some figures from the last time we dredged, and I know it's quite a substantial amount of funding required for that.
I believe it was in the 10 million range.
Yeah,
It was 10 million. Wow. Okay. And I remember when we did the regulations in 2021, I was on the board, I think it was my first year on the board, when we talked about some of the regulatory things that you discussed. I guess what I'd like to do is look at where the suggested increase would take us in relation to our peer communities a little more. I know you talked about it briefly, but, and I appreciate the chart, but I'd like to get some more information there before I make any recommendation. But thanks, Joe, appreciate it.
And just, again, I think that what you will be hearing from the three of us is an apples-to-apples comparison. If another community is either providing more or less services, that may explain the difference in fees. But if we're providing less and we're raising our fees to their level, that's a different situation. So I think we need to be able to understand, at least I need to be able to understand that difference.
Yeah, that would be helpful to add to this chart.
Yeah.
Is the services provided or included in the mooring fee?
Tom, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm great, thank you.
Great. Michelle?
nope, thank you.
Okay, so are there members of the public with comments or questions? I see a hand. Please go to the podium and give us your name and address for the record.
Mark O'Bore, 33 Elm Street, Hingham. I'm also chair of the Harbor Development Committee.
Yeah, good to see
So
you.
the last dredging, we paid $1.7 million, and there's grant money available for that as well. But the costs are going up significantly because of inflation. So I think in justifying the rate increases, the dredging anticipated costs is probably warrants those increases. My one question I have for you, and it's, again, it's, percentage. It's a small number of people actually have World's End moorings. I think it's less than 50, may even be 29 or something like that. But the increase in the World's End mooring fee you're proposing is almost 50% over the next 3 years, whereas the increase in the regular mooring fees is only about 22%. And so I was just curious if the members of the public are going to come back and say, why the discrepancy? And I know there's a long wait list. But $1,000 for a season for one mooring that you can't anchor on overnight seems high, especially in light of what I think Hull charges. So if you have a mooring on just the other side of the channel, I think the cost is probably $200-something a year for the season. So we might want to just bear that in mind as we look at it.
Great.
So we'd be looking at 200 in Hull versus 1,000 in Hingham, which is basically
Possibly.
right next door.
Possibly, yeah. So I don't know what the exact amount is in Hull, but I know it's significantly less. Yeah.
And they wouldn't be overnight rentals?
So our World's End moorings, you can't stay overnight, you can stay there if it's your mooring, multiple nights. It's just that they're more destination moorings and not like a storage mooring. So it's where people come from all over, from Boston, from Marblehead, all that, they come down and they stay there for a couple nights and then go back. Versus like a inner harbor mooring where that's where you keep your mooring for the season.
Right, okay.
I see we have a former select board member here, who I will always defer to. So Mary, if you've got,
Mary Power, 1 King Philip Path, but thank you very much. I just wanted to be clear, because I was looking on the website. The updated regulations and fees have not been posted yet?
that's correct.
Okay. What is going to be the time frame that, like, when they will get posted, and then when the board will come back and kind of talk about that? I'm asking because I'm the messenger here. I'm speaking on behalf of the boat owner in my household, so I'm the information gatherer,
Okay.
so thank you.
So my understanding is Ken wanted to wait until after this hearing to hear our input and then get it posted. Is that fair?
Yes, that's my understanding, is we'd hear from you, and then as soon as that's done, we would put it up. And that can be in a matter of an hour or two.
Yes. So it will be up, I'm assuming it's going to be up tomorrow. And we're going to give the public at least 2 weeks to get their comments to us. And I was going to ask, so does the harbor master have a special email or phone number or means that residents or boaters should use to communicate their comments?
We do, and it is on that website.
Okay.
It's harbormaster@hpd.org.
Okay. So this select board will be meeting again next Tuesday. It will not be on our agenda next Tuesday, that's a little too soon, but I anticipate it'll be on the meeting subsequent to that. And at that point, we'll be, again, soliciting comments from members of the public. Hopefully, those comments will have already been delivered to you, and we'll have a chance to look at them in advance. And so I would encourage anyone who does have comments to please check the harbor master's website, look at the regulations, look at the fees, and get him your comments. Anything else?
And it will be posted in, do we know what paper and when?
We typically post it in the Hingham Journal.
Yeah, I believe that it may be in more than one paper. We'll have to check. And I thought it was going to go in the Patriot Ledger as well, but at least, you're right, at least the Hingham Journal. And could you also make the request to go in the Hingham Anchor?
Yes. I think we have Carol Meyer with us.
I mean, it's sort of an appropriate name, the Hingham Anchor, or, it sort of fits in with our nautical
Very
theme here,
thematic.
so, yes. Any other members of the public, comments or questions? I don't know if anyone's participating online. I am seeing none. So that's it, really.
Thank you.
Joe, I appreciate your time.
So, and I believe, am I the next one on there as well?
You
Or-
just,
Oh, yes, the appointments.
oh, yes, how about that? So, next item on our agenda is to consider Assistant Harbor Master appointments. And Joe, do you want to introduce who you are recommending?
Yes, so we are recommending for the appointment of Assistant Harbor Master, Max Goldstein and Anthony Melendez. Max Goldstein is a full-time patrol officer for the Hingham Police Department. He was also a previous Assistant Harbor Master for us. Anthony Melendez is a full-time Plymouth County Sheriff's Deputy, and he is has just been appointed or in the process of being appointed as a special for Hingham Police as well. And with their appointments, as an assistant, it allows them, as police officers, to perform duties under Chapter 90B on the water, under the supervision of the harbor master.
I do remember when we interviewed Max Goldstein for the Hingham Police Force, his experience with the harbor master. We did discuss, and it was impressive. And Anthony Melendez, he's Plymouth County.
Correct.
Right. Liz, any questions?
No real questions, but just to confirm, the police chief has reviewed this as well.
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
It's assumed, but I just like to say it in public.
Yes. Yep. Bill?
I know Officer Goldstein well. He's an excellent police officer, so I'm sure he'll be great. I don't know Mr. Melendez, but I'm sure he'll be fine as well. I do have a question for you, though, Joe. I know that last year, for the first time, we appointed several full-time patrolmen to the water duties. How did that work out in terms of their interactions on the water, Ken utilizing their skill set? Never really followed up with Ken, so I wanted to see if you could give me some info on that.
Yes, that worked out very well. We had them out primarily on weekends when it's our busier time. They were a great supplement to our patrol staff. All great interactions, very well-versed in, most of them very well-versed in boating. Like the other Goldstein, Dan, he was on there. I was a hand-to-hand, he was in a previous assistant as well. So it was a great addition to our staffing.
Great. Good to hear.
Any member of the public, comments or questions? Seeing none, I am prepared to take a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Max Goldstein and Anthony Melendez as Assistant Harbor Masters for the town of Hingham for a term ending June 30th, 2027.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. They have been appointed.
Thank you
Please
very
let them
Thank
know.
you.
Good seeing you.
Have a nice evening.
Next item on our agenda is to consider approval of the agreement with Eastern Minerals, Inc. to supply the town with rock salt. Did you bring us some rock salt? We can inspect it.
You always ask the difference, so. I should bring it.
So you realize it was a warm day today and you're wearing this coat like you're
I'm
cold?
I get cold really easily.
So please walk us through what's being proposed.
So yeah, it's just kind of our standard agreement for the rock salt for the roads during our winter, to make sure that they all stay safe, especially like last year, we had a lot of ice. So it's just our agreement to keep them, have them as our contractor to keep the rock salt shed full.
So the rate that's in the agreement, the $58, is that higher or lower than last year? And how was that rate arrived at?
I can answer some of that. I actually think it's slightly lower. I think it was still 58 and change last year. It's a cooperative procurement that the town of Medway does every year that we kind of join on to. And
Okay.
Eastern Minerals happened to be the low bidder as they were in the past for rock salt.
And the 300,000 cap, is that the same as what we had last year?
It is. It's just a not to exceed to make sure we can
Right.
get enough just in case the weather turns out to be bad.
And do you know how close we came to the cap last year?
I do not, but we could find out from Randy and get that information for you.
I mean, my recollection is that we were comfortably below it.
I don't think we went over it.
Right.
From me looking back, but I don't know the exact number off the top of my head
Okay.
right now, sorry.
Just trying to get a sense of whether that number's, we're likely to live with it or not, and it sounds like we
It's comfortable to
likely are.
work with.
And again, is this consistent with our budget forecast?
Yes. This comes from the DPW operating budget every year.
Liz, any questions?
No other questions. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I would submit to you, I think we've been below the amount for the last 2 or 3 years, probably. I mean, the winters have been pretty mild. We haven't really had a significant snowstorm in about 3 years, right? So, I mean, although it's, it's used a lot with freezing rain and the crews do such a great job. We appreciate it, but I'm fine supporting it.
Great. Any member of the public, comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm prepared to take a motion.
I will make make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with Eastern Minerals Incorporated to supply the town with rock salt in an amount not to exceed $300,000.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next one.
You're the next one.
Okay, the next one is to consider approval of the agreement with Liberty Chevrolet, Inc. for a 2025 Chevrolet full-size K2500 4x4 Silverado pickup truck with plow for the Department of Public Works. Ashley?
So this is we had a prior agreement that you guys had signed off on, and that vendor couldn't fulfill. We'd been waiting a very long time, and they couldn't even give us a timeline of when they could get us the vehicle. So we went looking into other vendors through Combis, and found Liberty that has one and is able to get it to us within 3 weeks. And it's actually, it's $1,200 less than we were gonna pay for the other one.
And how comparable is it compared to the other one?
It's the exact same truck.
Oh,
Yep.
that's pretty comparable, okay.
Great.
Everything's the same.
And so the end of the calendar year date that's here, sounds like you'll be comfortable. For
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, they already have it. They just need the signed agreement, and they can put the plow and everything on it for us, and we'll be good to go.
Great. We did discuss this, so I got no
Yes.
questions. Liz?
Yes, excellent. So yes, I know we discussed it and it was budgeted for. Great. Thank you.
Bill?
No questions.
Any member of the public with questions? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
I'd make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with Liberty Chevrolet Incorporated for a 2025 Chevrolet full-size K2500 4x4 Silverado pickup truck with plow for the Public Works Department in an amount not to exceed $67,041.51.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Approved.
Thank you.
Great.
One thing, Ash, before you go, I wanted to say, I know you filled in with some leadership in Randy's absence, and I want to tell you did a great job, and thank you for filling the void and all the great work you did while Randy was out, so thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is to consider approval of the agreement with Weston and Sampson for work related to Route 3A Sewer Improvement Project. Mr. Russ Tierney, our superintendent, good to see you. So if you could walk us through the agreement and how it fits in with the Route 3A project.
Absolutely. Let me get to the right page in my bulletin. So, on September 17th of 2024, the Select Board voted to execute a contract with Diggett Construction for $3,527,188.74 for the construction of the new force main on Route 3A. The construction is scheduled to begin in the spring. We are going to set up a pre-construction meeting prior to the end of the year this year. The completion date is September 16, 2025. They have to be completed by that time. The project's being funded by Article 18, sewer authorization to borrow for Route 3A sewer construction. We requested and passed to borrow $13 million. The town requested American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funding for $2.5 million, and that any ARPA funding and grants that we get will be used to reduce the cost for this project. Weston and Sampson will be providing additional engineering services for the project, which is the agreement we are considering tonight. The budget is for $559,000. The first task of that is construction engineering office services. It's approximately about 1,670 hours for over 42 weeks. First part of it is the bidding services. So we've already bid the job, but we're now going through the process of all the paperwork. We did sign the agreement, but they're just going to be on call in case we have an issue with all that paperwork. So that should be a very small portion of it, but we wanted to make sure they included in case we needed anything from them to double check everything as we're doing it. The construction phase service, their in-house engineers will be doing pre-meetings with us, weekly and monthly progress meetings, They will video the entire area and document any existing conditions prior to the project beginning. And then they'll review shop drawings, submittals, and monthly pay requisitions, and then submit the pay requisitions to us for processing. The other task in this agreement is the residential project representative services. So it's approximately 1,700 hours of 43 weeks. The reason why they put 2 individuals in this proposal was if they bring in 2 or 3 crews to get this job moving faster, we're gonna have to have extra help on site to make sure everything's done properly according to the agreement and the design. So the resident representative is a in-field, in-office person, so they split their time. They observe the week for the work for contract conformity. They review the project schedule. They serve as the engineer's liaison with the contractor. They review shop drawings, like I said before, and they also do field work shop drawings, and they transmit clarifications and change orders of those drawings to the contractor. The construction representative will be on site every day, 8 to 10 hours a day, to oversee the entire project. They'll monitor the day-to-day activities. They'll record all daily payment line items for review each month. They'll take all necessary ties and other documentation for as-built drawings, and they report directly to the resident project representative. In addition to that, because this project's so important, we're working with JR and the engineering department. They're also going to assist on this to make sure that Weston Sampson's doing their job, is making sure and they're doing their job, because this is a very big job, and it's going to take a lot of everybody's effort to make sure it goes over well. So that agreement is what we have in front of you guys tonight. We did look at the hourly rates compared to our other large engineering firms, and they're in line with the rest of our large engineering firms, so it's not any more money than we would usually spend on this. So that's what it is.
And this contract is services as needed?
Services as needed, so it's a
So-
budget number.
Right, and again,
every-
it's a cap, it's not.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, yep.
Liz, any questions?
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I remember you saying they would bill us on a monthly basis.
Correct.
Right, time and materials, okay. And this is the amount that you were expecting?
That's
This
the
is
budget amount.
This is the budget
Yeah,
amount for this phase?
they actually did 42 weeks, because the project really only takes 6 months or 7 months, but because of lead time and all that stuff, we just want to make sure they covered everything that could possibly happen.
Okay.
So in the past, we've been under budget in a few of those, because then we take on some of the responsibility ourselves, because we have the knowledge and all the people in place to do that, so we may do that here too. But again, we just want to make sure we have them in case we all get to a point where we can't be there all the time.
Okay, great. And has the sewer commission reviewed this?
Soil Commission has not reviewed this particular one, but I did talk to him about them. I told them I was bringing it to you because we want to get this going so that we can start the meetings now. So we weren't meeting for another 2 or 3 weeks, so I just wanted to make sure we got it approved by you guys. But they do know, they're well aware of this contract.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill?
Russ, what's the anticipated start date on the 3A?
It'll be billed as soon as Mass DOT allows us back on the street. Typically, it's in April sometime, but they also may look at it, and if the weather gets better, we may be able to talk to them about it. So we will talk to Dig It. We're going to have a meeting with them prior to the end of this calendar year, just to see what their feeling is and when they're going to get in. They do have to submit a bunch of things to Mass DOT, like all their traffic plans and things like that, so that'll take some time. One of the things we thought about, it may start a little early, but after talking to Dig It, they really want to do this project well. They want to do it the best, so they don't want to rush to get in here to start, and then all of a sudden they can't be here anymore because of weather, so they want to get a fresh start in the spring and just hit it hard, so.
And how long is anticipated to last?
I think it's about 6 or 7 months in total.
6, 7
But
months.
they have to be out of there by September. Their deadline is September 16th of '25.
Great, thank you.
Yes, so you did mention that before, but the deadline here goes beyond that in the contract.
Our contract?
So this is through November 30th.
That's because after we finish the project itself, there's always a lag time with the engineers while they're
Right.
doing the as-built and things, so we want their contract to go a little bit longer than
Okay.
the end of construction. So the other date I talked about was end of construction.
I got to tell you, I'm originally from Philadelphia, and Dig It was a thing that people would say in Motown, and so you really, it's
I can tell you,
Reminisce.
they did do work in the town before, as I said, when we were
Okay.
doing their contract, and they did a
Yep.
pretty good job with it, so, we'll keep our eye on them.
that's good. Let me see if there's anything else.
I know.
I'm just making sure that, so we do have the insurance provisions in here. Okay, I have no other question. Any member of the public, comments or questions? I am prepared to take a motion.
I will make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement with Weston and Sampson for work related to Route 3A Sewer Improvements Project in an amount not to exceed $559,000.
Second.
Been moved and second. Before we vote, I just have one other question. I noticed that this agreement is retroed back to July, beginning of July.
Yeah, because we did the bid back in July, and they did do some work prior to us getting this from them and it moving along. So with the departure of our, what was Kathy's title? Sorry. Procurement officer, we had to do some work. We took it out of another budget, so we just want to make sure we can put that back in. Because we didn't want to slow down the process with Kathy.
Right. So actually, the retro date was appropriate here.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Okay, it's been moved and second. Roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys.
Now the fun stuff. Not that that wasn't fun.
Next, we are pleased to welcome back Marco Bohr for a Harbor Development Committee update. Oh, just sit down so that,
And do I have slides? Awesome. All right. Thank you. So I'm here to present to you the findings of our Harbor Development Committee survey about 30 Summer Street. Before I begin, let me put it into context, because I've had several calls in the last few weeks as to why did the town buy this? And so, for everybody's background, the original intent behind it was to gain some control over the waterfront. If you look at the water line of Hingham, it's my understanding that less than 6% of our land is actually publicly accessible. The rest is all privately owned. And so having access to the water is critical for the 99% of our residents who are not on the water. So controlling waterfront access was key. It also allowed us to gain some control over where in the future we will put our shared multi-use path as we develop or redevelop Route 3A. And ultimately, you know, the price, while not inexpensive, worked out to about $9 per taxpayer for the next 20 years. So it's a nominal amount. And so from a capital expenditure perspective, you know, I think that was a really prudent investment for the town. And the purchase price, I'm sure, has appreciated since we acquired it, or the value rather, of the property. So that's the background.
and just add, there's a very limited supply of land that would be available. And when the opportunity comes, I think it was important that we act on
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yes. So the property itself is relatively small. It's on a 0.2 acre lot. The existing building has, and you'll see it in the little picture there, has back then 8 parking spots plus parking on the gravel. Our town planner, I think, has determined there's only 5 parking spots now. So whatever the number is, it's limited. So in terms of the function of what we can do with that building, it's always going to be constrained. We wanted to get input from our town residents as to what they'd like to see. And so we fielded this survey, and much to our surprise, we got a very interesting number of responses. In fact, it totaled over 748. And I can't help but think at town meeting, the second night, we're lucky to get a quorum. So obviously, this is a hot button item. There's a lot of interest in what can we do with this property and why. So we put together basically 5 questions to ask in a broad way. What would you residents like to do with this very valuable piece of property as we go forward? By the way, the answers that we got back are not binding. We are here as Harbor Development Committee as a advisory to the Select Board, but it will guide our recommendations as to what we think we could do with this property as we go forward in time. So as you can see from the pie chart up there, the majority of residents really want to be able to enjoy the truly spectacular view from the back of this building. The majority of them want some kind of maritime-related programming, recreation classes, yoga classes, senior center lunches, story hours for the library for little kids, true use of that building. There was a minority who said knock it down and create a public park. And what that sort of negates is that in today's permitting environment, it is almost impossible to put a building on the waterfront. And so having a pre-existing building in itself makes that property imminently more valuable. And we do have some open space. The mobile property is obviously an example of that. And we've got plans on what to do with that as we go forward. Some said public restrooms, because that is the busiest part of the harbor. It's where Hingham Maritime runs programming with about 1,000 children and adults going through there during the summer season, and there's no public restroom. A welcome center was mentioned by about 7%, a harbor master office 5%, and one said, create a public parking lot. It was more than one, but a relatively minor number. So the key takeaway is what our residents are really looking for is we want some kind of an activities-oriented program to occur in that location. So that's one answer. The second question we asked is, would you support leasing this property to recover the town's annual debt service? And the majority, almost 2/3, said yes. And it sounds great, right? Because there's a lot of concern in town about inflation, rising costs, having to increase taxes, et cetera. The challenge with that is that it's very difficult, in our opinion, to find a suitable lessee for such a building. Because at market rates, you would have to charge close to $8,000 a month for a building that, in theory, would only be available for a couple of years until we figure out what we're truly going to do with it for the town. So you couldn't build it out, for example, to put a, fish store in it, because it would just be too expensive. And we have some precedent with another building on the harbor that has been unoccupied for over 3 years, where we haven't been able to come to an agreement to lease it. And so I'm very concerned that we have this building sitting here empty for another 2 or 3 years because we can't figure out how to come up with a lease agreement that works, to offset any costs associated with it. So that is my biggest concern is the town voters approve this, we ought to use it. But anyway, there's interest in leasing it. So the next question, and this is the really eye-opening one to me, is, if we leased it, what private use would best serve the Hingham community? And overwhelmingly, people said, we want a restaurant, a waterfront restaurant. And as somebody who looks at zoning laws, it's almost impossible to permit the building of a waterfront restaurant. Now, having said all that, my personal feeling on that is if the majority of residents want a waterfront restaurant, we ought to find a way to make it happen. It's not rocket science. I mean, people do it in Situate, they do it in Plymouth, they do it in Boston. There's lots of ability to do things like this. So it may not be a suitable location for a restaurant given the limited size, but the idea that the residents want a restaurant, to me, seems very encouraging. And so that's something that we will consider as we look at developing the master plan specifically for Hingham Harbors. What can we do from a zoning perspective to maybe enable the very limited number of other properties on the waterfront to be able to, run it as a restaurant, since that seems to be a very desirable use of our harbor front. The next biggest slice of the pie at 32% was offering maritime programming. And they specifically mentioned Hingham Maritime because that's where the majority of young kids learn to sail and row as they go up through the educational system here in Hingham. Some people said rent it out as a marina because there's not enough dock space available in our harbor in general. So having more slips would be nice, except of course it negates the fact that that particular area has never been dredged, and the actual use of it is probably about 30% during high tide. So probably not very practical, especially given the complexities of dredging in Hingham Harbor. Some people said they wanted a retail store, maybe like the old quarterdeck in Situate, a little gifty store kind of thing, an art gallery. Somebody said bank ATM. I did not notice, by the way, in the comments, a nail salon or a real estate office. Those were not mentioned, but those seem to be very popular activities in Hingham. So restaurants, but again, permitting-wise, probably not realistic in that location.
we had a little bit of I'm not sure what the right wording is, but a direct question about if the town could sell it for profit, would you be in favor of selling it? And I think the rationale behind it is, again, there's concern in the town about the rising costs and the town being able to pay its bills. The majority, 53% said no. We strongly oppose or oppose it. 28% said yes, and 19% were neutral on the issue. I think, to me, there's a little bit of a moral obligation on it as well, because the owners who sold the town the building had specifically desired, although it's not a legal agreement, that the building would be used for basically maritime activities for kids. They effectively sold the building at a lowest bidder price. Apparently, there were several other bidders on the building for a higher price. So anyway, I would feel morally a little bit, upset if the town ended up doing it. But clearly, I think the residents has spoken and said, no, we want to make sure we keep it because they don't make any more land, right, on the water, so waterfront land. There were an amazing number of open-ended responses. And we will make those publicly available, and some of them were frankly quite witty and funny. And I've tried to summarize them, and they categorize basically in about 10 or so common themes. And one, again, at the top was a restaurant, a brewery, beer garden, et cetera. Second, and these are sort of in order of frequency, a facility that rents kayaks, paddleboards, maritime-related activities, a playground, which is an interesting one, a spray pad, splash pad for kids, additional water access. They all sort of connect. A lot of people spoke about Duxbury Maritime and the incredible facilities they have there. One thing that was higher rated than I would have expected is, and I thought it was sort of a fluke, but somebody said, we'd like to have an infinity pool overlooking the harbor in that location. And there were a number of other comments relating to the fact that people want a pool, and I think that harks back to the fact that our country club pool is still in an ongoing situation. And so clearly there's an interest in having a town pool as well, but it's probably not the right location given the limited parking and the limited size of the lot. A library branch, and I could see a beautiful view. There were some comments about putting affordable housing in that location, and event space. So the list goes on and on in terms of ideas, and I've put in the slide deck some open-ended comments. They're really for your reference more than anything else. I'd like to make some comments from our viewpoint, from the Harbor Development Committee viewpoint, and that is, it's clear to us that the residents have spoken in favor of a water-related activity in that location. And so, whether that's morning yoga classes or reading hour or being able to rent a kayak or expanding the ability to learn to sail and row, I think that's what they're looking for. They're also, clear in that they don't want the town to sell the building because there is so much limited space, right, and access to the waterfront. And the restaurant idea is not going to go away. People are just clearly very interested in having a place to go and enjoy a cocktail and a meal. And I'm not quite sure how we solve that. It won't be in this location, I think, but it's certainly something that we need to take more seriously. So what's next? A couple of things. The building itself is serviceable, but it is certainly not compliant for town use in the sense that the handicap access to bathrooms is fairly limited. It's doable, but it wouldn't meet modern day standards. We need a vision as to what we're going to do exactly in this location, and there's lots of ideas that have been floated to us in terms of, well, we should knock it down, make it ADA and MAAB compliant, possibly put a second story on it so that we can use the building year-round for facilities. But again, I want to reiterate, I'm very concerned that we don't have this building sit empty while we're trying to formulate ideas on what we're going to do with it and what we're going to, how we're going to come up with the funding to actually make it up to a modern standard. So I think we have to come up with some very creative ideas on how to maybe solve it. So it's our recommendation as a committee that we need to think about this in a long-term view and a short-term view. The long-term view is, we really need to formulate this vision as to what the potential use of that building could be, given the input from all of our residents. And so how much, parking do we really need? How much functional building space inside do we need? Is there a requirement for storage? What are these zoning issues? And they're going to be formidable because we're in a velocity zone, so the building would have to be raised to some degree. But again, all of that is doable, but it's not going to be easy. I think that when we looked at another potential building project on Barnes Wharf, there were going to be something like 27 variances that were needed to be able to permit this. So this is going to be a long road before anything new gets built, in my opinion, as a result. But it's something we need to start now, and we need to make sure that, we can cross off the things that we absolutely cannot do and the things that we might be able to move and the things that we can do. And then come up with a budget to bring back to you and say, here's what our recommendation is. Meanwhile, it's also our recommendation that we figure a way to use this building ASAP. Because again, having an empty building is probably not good. You're going to get water leaks, you're going to get all kinds of other problems. So since I think it's going to be very difficult to lease the building, what we recommend is we come up with a creative plan to perhaps find an entity, and it could be Hingham Maritime, could be the rec center, it could be whatever, nonprofit, presumably, entity would be, to lease the building for, a token dollar, and then have that entity manage all of the costs, because there are costs to running that building. There's heat, there's water, there's utilities, et cetera, and come up with a way to split any profits from running a program in that building. So at least the building gets use, that the taxpayers are paid for, the costs are covered beyond the debt service, and it gives us some time to really come up with the quote-unquote perfect solution. But again, I'm very concerned, based upon precedent, that this building sit empty for 3 years until we figure out what to do with it. It's just, I'd be slightly embarrassed on behalf of our town taxpayers if that happened. So that's our Harbor Committee recommendation. Any questions or observations?
Well, first, just thank you for not only the work, but the enthusiasm, because there's so many things going on in town that we need advocates to make sure that this building is used. And I really do appreciate your work personally, as well as your committee's work. It's a lot. With respect to the survey results, to what extent do you think those results are representative of the community as a whole?
So unfortunately, what we forgot to ask is the demographic question. So I don't know how many, what the age demographics are, the resident location, their activities. I would guess, and it's an educated guess, that the majority of people who have an interest in harbor.
I mean, in part, so Hingham Maritime sent out an email encouraging responses to this survey, and almost, gave the answers that they wanted on that survey. I got the email, and a lot of residents do. So I view the results as interesting, but it's not necessarily representative, because there was a clear effort to make sure that a particular constituency responded to the survey.
I would argue a little bit against that, in that we publicly publicized this on the town website.
Yeah.
We put an article in the Hingham Anchor, which was very neutral. We put it out on social media through Harbor Development Committee, et cetera. So yes, arguably, you're going to get, people who are interested in responding to it. And remember, there's over 1,000 participants. Our town has 9,000 households, and 1,000 of these are involved in maritime-related activities. So you're going to get a bias to the waterfront, absolutely. Yeah.
But I really, from my personal view, I like the restaurant idea. We're already working on the menu. But I think it's, from the discussions that I've had with the town administrator, and I suspect my other select board members are moving in the same direction, is that we don't intend to leave this building unused. That you are exactly right, that there is a long-term vision that needs to be worked on, and an interim solution so that the building's properly used, implemented soon. And I think we're all moving in that same direction. So I really appreciate your support in all of this.
I hear you might be
Yeah.
interested in having your select board office in the waterfront.
Tom wants his office, it's such a desirable,
Yes.
although that infinity pool, that's,
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely, yes.
be great for the schools. Okay, Liz,
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marco, for being here and your dedication and passion for this. And thank you to the whole committee. I'm so glad we did the survey. I'm thrilled with the response. Appreciate all of the feedback that was shared. And I absolutely agree with the recommendation in terms of the short-term and long-term strategy. I have been saying that as well. We need a plan and a comprehensive plan for the harbor, and this is a critical piece of it. And in the short term, I do want the building to be used, and I do want to recover some funds. So I like the idea of a creative lease agreement. I think that's, I want to do some more thinking on that, but there's no reason not to use that building, and there's no reason to not get some revenue and try to recoup what the taxpayer is paying. So,
To come back to your question, Joe, about survey respondents, when we did the recent survey about the traffic crossing by the post office, how many
Yes.
responses did we get on that?
I don't know.
It wasn't 750.
yeah, not nearly as many.
No.
Okay,
Closer to
Yeah.
like 75.
75, okay.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So
much more.
this
This
is
was a
clearly a
big
topic
effort.
of interest to people.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
is,
Yeah.
for sure. And non-residents may have responded, and that's okay.
True,
It's-
yep. I don't know how to filter those out.
Right.
Right, but, the fact that there's this interest is
Right.
important.
Yeah.
And we want people to
yeah.
come to Hingham.
Yeah, yeah. Bill?
So first of all, Marco, thank you for your work on the survey. The Harbor Development Committee has been fantastic, and your leadership has been tremendous. I mean, your enthusiasm for this opportunity, but for everything with the harbor, I mean, just thank you for all you're doing and all that you've done. So I wanted to point that out there. I was very excited to buy this parcel the night of town meeting when we did it, and I'm still very excited about it, because I think the potential is tremendous for our community and something that our residents can enjoy. I'm glad we did the survey, and I was a big proponent of doing the survey, because my feeling was, hey, the taxpayers paid for this, let's get some feedback on where we go with this. And I think 750 responses it's fantastic, and I read through some of those comments, and I'm glad people took time to give us some feedback on it. I agree with everything you said about we don't want this to sit dormant. So I think we should make a decision on the future of this building within the next couple months. I'm concerned about lagging, like the bathhouse at the bathing beach. That cannot be the model. We need to make a decision on this thing and start moving on it. Having been on also would delay implementation of the plan. The parking requirements under our zoning bylaw are so many, it has to be so many seats so many parking spots per seat, and I just don't see it there.
It's not realistic.
It's not gonna be there in terms of any sort of restaurant that we can put in there. But I like the enthusiasm for a restaurant. I've always said a restaurant on the waterfront would be fantastic in Hingham, similar to a Situate or Cohasset. I'm very partial to the water maritime type use, because I think that type of use could benefit the largest amount of residents who paid for this thing and voted to move forward with town meeting. So, agree with Joe and Liz about, let's make a decision for the long term, and as part and parcel of that plan, we have a short-term plan in there too, so we get use in it as we're moving forward with our ultimate decision. But I think this is a great start. Appreciate all your time and effort, and looking forward to moving forward with this.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to say one last thing. I want to thank Kate Richardson at the IT department who tabulated all of this data. So without her help, we wouldn't have gotten back the results as quickly as we did. So,
Great.
thank you.
So after we purchased the building, I know our town administrator was very active in making sure that some remedial work was done so that we would be able to use it properly. Tom, you want to
Sure, I
talk
can
about that?
speak to that. So we identified some money through town meeting last year, through the use of some of our auction funds, if I remember right. I believe to the tune of about $30,000, is that right?
28,000.
Yeah. And we've used some just to improve, just to make the roof, to make sure that the structure was going to be left in good condition. We haven't expended the majority of that money yet, because we didn't know if we were going to lease it to a private enterprise and what their needs were going to be. We didn't want to put money into it and then have it all ripped out. So we have about $20,000+ available. We have a layout plan that we could engage in and start that work, should we want to do that, if we're going to go down the path of like a municipal use or something to that effect. If we're going to go a different path with a lease, then we would need probably to do that and then see what ideas come in and what their needs would be. So, but we have some money. When we decide that that's what we want to do, we have some money to actually do.
And what about the parking lot? Did you make some improvements there?
We did. Up front, the preliminary paving work has been done. The apron work around the building has been completed. We wouldn't do the final paving coat until we know for sure what's going to happen. If we have to get heavy machinery and trucks in there, we didn't want to damage the final parking lot. So, but it's getting there. It's coming along. So if we decide that this is what we want to do, we could actually pull the trigger fairly quickly, I think.
So one thing that I don't think we've talked about is whether or not we can partner with our neighbors there, so that, in fact, we may be constrained in terms of parking, but, and access to the water, for example, but if we worked cooperatively with a neighbor, some of those issues could be relieved, and then we could have something that'd be very nice. So I think that's another option that we should be looking at. I really agree with Bill that we can't languish. I mean, we simply, this is not going to be on an agenda 6 months from now when we're going to be considering further options. We do need to move this forward, and this board will make sure that that happens.
Can I make one more point, too?
Please.
I've asked, but I haven't received a definitive answer on how the 3A renovation project will impact the parcel. We don't know how much the front of the parcel will be taken for 3A, or will it be taken at all? And I don't know, I don't think we have the answer to that. I think it's been speculation by JR and Susan Murphy and some other folks involved with that. But that's gonna be a big part of it too. Like, if we lose a good portion of the front of it to the renovation project, that's gonna shape, you know, ultimately what we do there also. And that's gonna impact use. So I think we need to really try to get more definitive answers on that before we make a decision on what the use will be.
Right, and on the backside, the shared use path comes fairly close to the building. That will have an impact on how we can use the building as well.
Yes.
So,
Although the shared use path may be cantilevered over the water. So
oh, really?
that's potentially an option, yes.
I've not seen that in the plans. Is that relatively new?
We've discussed it, but we haven't taken it very far.
Okay.
But yes.
That would be, okay.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, so we do have a lot of balls in the air, but we will not let them drop. We will keep this going.
I'll hold you to it.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
what is your schedule in terms of the committee? How often are you meeting, and when?
We meet once a month. In fact, we're meeting in about 20 minutes. And, you know, we are incorporating any sort of ideas into another project we're working on, which is the master plan for Hingham Harbor. So, and we will have that finished before the end of the year.
Right.
Great.
Okay, so please convey to your committee, which is about to have its meeting,
Yep.
Our sincere appreciation. This has been a lot of work. Great.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marco.
Before you leave, were there any comments from members of the public? Okay, great. Oh, nope.
I'm a neighbor to the project, and
If you can just come up so that people who are watching can see you.
You have to stand at the
If you don't mind just going up to the mic.
so they can record it.
There are people who zoom in and watch, and you will just be a voice without a body until you're up there. You could just introduce with the name and address.
Tony Giorgio, 73 School Street, however, I own the marina next door. So I think what you guys are doing is a great idea. It needs to be, something needs to go there. Obviously, whatever I can do to support the development of that, I'm here to say, let's do it. But to your point and your point, this can't kick any longer down the street, because you got 3A opening up, you got walkways that need to come through, you can't cross over the street. So to your point, we got to get this thing going. So just here to let you guys know I'm here for you.
Wonderful.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you, thanks for being here. Okay,
Thank you.
so I believe we are going to just move right to public comment. If there are members of the public who have comments on items not on the agenda, now is your chance to speak.
Thank you.
I am not seeing any. Move to Town Administrator Select Board reports. Michelle, I'm going to start with you.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
And is Art on Zoom, or is he?
Art is under the weather today.
Ah,
Oh, no.
and do you know if Tom had any,
I don't believe he had any, but I am not sure.
okay. Liz?
Okay. Nothing really to report, but just did want to thank the Historical Society for a wonderful event over the weekend, Tavern Night, great community event. They had over 500 people. And Arts Walk also had a huge turnout this
It was
Sunday.
absolutely huge,
The weather
yes.
was perfect. So congrats to the Downtown Association, and thank you to all the volunteers that made that happen.
Bill?
I was going to mention those two events. Maddie's Promise was a
Oh,
tremendous
yes.
event too over the weekend too. So a lot of good things happened over the weekend between Maddie's Promise on Friday night, Tavern Night on Saturday, and then the Arts Walk on Sunday. So congratulations to all the people who planned and organized those events.
And I would just add that early in-person voting has started in Town Hall. Actually, it started on Saturday and today, and then it'll be again on Thursday, Saturday, then the following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. This is your opportunity to come in person. You don't need to reserve a time, you just show up. Voting's important, so please participate. And Mr. Mayo? That's okay, but we are at, were there any reports that you wanted to make as the town administrator?
No reports tonight, thank you.
Okay. And we are meeting next week?
Our next meeting is next Tuesday.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote, Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.